Welcome to In the Middle, a podcast on Christianity in the Middle East, where we explore questions of history, religion, culture, and policy that affects the ancient and indigenous Christian communities of the Middle East. On January 31st, 2024, at the 4th Annual International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., I had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Kaldo Ramzi, Director General of the Syriac Culture and Arts Directorate of the Kurdistan Regional Government in northern Iraq. Mr. Ramzi shared details on the background and mission of the Syriac Culture and Arts Directorate and the Syriac Heritage Museum, and how they stand to preserve and develop the endangered Christian heritage of Iraq. So without further ado, thanks for joining the conversation, and welcome to In the Middle. Kaldo, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here at the IRF Summit, the 2024 International Religious Freedom Summit here in Washington, D.C. You spoke this morning at one of the panels about vulnerable communities in the Middle East. And you come, as I've known for a long time, I've followed your work, you come from a very vulnerable community in the Middle East. That is the Syriac people, the Syriac Christians, which includes, of course, Syriacs, Chaldeans, and Assyrians of Iraq. And I understand you have a pretty, what I would call an important role in the community, in the Christian community in Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan for that matter. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'm Director General for the Syriac Culture and Arts. This organization or institute, it's part of the Ministry of Culture. And we have 4 other directorates. One of them is Syriac Heritage Museum, it's Syriac Cultural Library, and we have Syriac Arts Group, and we have other directorate in the Duhok city. So we are covering all Nineveh Plain and all Kurdistan KRG zone or cities, main cities. As we are, let's say, dealing with the authors, poets, with the directors, with artists, and also with youth people that they have creative ideas, they want to do something for their language and for their heritage. So we are focusing on heritage, we are focusing on what remained from our grandfathers and grandmothers, and what we preserve it from the entire intangible and tangible heritage that is now available to our new generation.
Thank you. Yeah, when I first came across the Syriac Heritage Museum, as well as the Directorate of Culture and the Arts in the KRG, I was blown away. I was very surprised, very happy and encouraged by that fact alone. And then I started to dig into it more, and was very impressed with what I saw, and that's really how I encountered you. And luckily, we were able to connect. You mentioned intangible and tangible cultural legacy. Could you just explain a little bit more about what that means specifically in the context of the Syriacs of northern Iraq?
You know, for us, Syriac cultural heritage, it's very deep and rich heritage towards our country, to Iraqi. This heritage is distinguished as a nation from the other ethnic groups in the country, but at the same time, it's a part, unified us with them. Why? Because it's a main part of the culture heritage of the country. So for us, it's something very important to work on both sides, intangible and tangible. You know, the first lesson, Tana'id, we call it, or first lesson to know who we are as identity, it is the lullaby, then it's a folk tales that was telling from our grandmothers and our mothers when we are a child. So this is the first connection, or the first connection to the people that they want this identity and they want to preserve the heritage. So this is the intangible. We have too many, let us say, songs, musics. We have, as a nation, we have too many folk tales to tell. So all these are, let's say, intangible heritage. And also from the other hand, what is remaining from the, let's say, objects or subjects, now it's on the museums that is tangible heritage. So we are dealing with both the habits, the clothes, traditional clothes, etc., the tools, the house waves, let's say,
And this is specifically in the museum you're referring to.
yeah,
Okay.
this is specifically in the Directorate of the Heritage and in the museum, especially in our museum. But what is the role of our people in the theater? What's the role of our people in the language? How we develop our language, and how was the role of us for developing Arabic language? It's another kind of intangible heritage, and also the music that we have, the folk music, the songs, the folk tales, all these other intangible issues.
So it sounds like, as you call the intangible culture, the oral tradition, the generational, that's passed down from generation to generation. It sounds as though the museum seeks to memorialize this and preserve it in the museum, of course, for generations to come. Because as you know, and I mean, you know better than anybody, but as we have observed here in the States, during the ISIS caliphate, the ISIS takeover of northern Iraq, a lot of our cultural legacy, going back thousands of years, was destroyed. And if this museum does nothing else but preserve that, what's left of it, I'll call that a runaway success.
We came from a very rich heritage, as I told you, but what's left, what are remaining now, we are working to preserve it. But we are working in something we called digitalization of the cultural heritage. And this is very important project that we are working on. Why? Because we need this information to be available in the website. Now, technology, we should benefit from the technology as a nation. As a nation, we called ourselves, I have this quote, always I mentioned, we are diaspora nation. In Arabic, we call it نحن شعب الانتشار, because we spread in the whole world. We are in America, in Australia, in Europe, in West. So what's remaining in Iraq now, in Syria, in let's say Iran, in Turkey, in all these places. But our people are spread in all these areas. So we thought that it's a very good idea to digitalize all the heritage, especially the intangible heritage, and to digitalize it and make it affordable for whole people. Maybe someone is born in America or in the West, and now he has accessibility to have information about this culture heritage, which is very rich culture heritage. This is very important that we are working.
I agree, absolutely. Now, you referred many times there to our cultural heritage, our people as a diaspora people in Iraq and elsewhere. I want to put some definition around that, if you could. We've spoken about the Syriac Heritage, the museum, but we've also spoken about the various churches within the Syriac Christians of Iraq. We have, of course, the Syriac Orthodox Catholic, Chaldean Catholic, Assyrian Church of the East. Could you give us an idea of what the landscape looks like in Iraq for our people, how many people we have left, how they identify themselves, and that sort of thing? Do they all regard themselves as separate people, or do they consider themselves one Syriac people?
No.
Tell us exactly how it looks there.
Normal people, they connected to each other. Our community is like that. We were like that, and we are, and we will be like that, because we need each other, and this is blood issue. For our identity, we have a problem of identity and name, especially. You mentioned Syriac. Yeah, we are using Syriac as a name. Why? Because our language, officially, it's Syriac. We cannot say this language, according to academic, it is Chaldean. You can say it's Chaldean dialect, you can say it's Assyrian dialect. Academically, it's a Syriac language. Yeah. So that's why everything in heritage and in culture, you are writing in Syriac. So Syriac author. Yeah. You are presenting, let us say, theater or a play in Syriac language. So we call it Syriac theater. Yeah. So this is what we mean by Syriac. We mean we are one entire nation, and we believe that we started from the Akkadian Empire because it was unified. Then it comes the Babylonian 1, 2, and then Assyrian first, middle, and modern. Then the new Babylonian we call Chaldean, and also within that there was Aramaic. So all these, our grandfather Aramaic, they give us creative things with 22 letters.
Yeah.
No one can do it. So it's actually, we're proud of this issue. So that's why we said all these are part or let's say part of our identity. So to me, if you told me I'm Syriac, I'm proudly Syriac. I'm Chaldean. I'm a Syrian. So some of our people, they want to focus on one period. I don't know why. We have too many things in all these periods. Akkadian, they give too many things. Sargon Akkadaya, etc. All these names are very, let us say, important to us. And also, Assyrian period. The Assyrian period was an amazing period. Yeah, so we have too many things in this period. We have too many things in Chaldean period, in Nebuchadnezzar, what he did, what he achieved. So why not? We should focus on Aramaic. Why not? They were very creative. Yeah. Without them, till now we were cuneiform, using cuneiform. So no, we proudly said that our language is one of the ancient languages. Yeah. And we created 22 letters. So you can imagine how creative they were. Yeah. So we should proud of all these. We are, somehow it's complex towards our nation, towards Syriac people, towards Assyrian Chaldean people, you know. Yeah. It's the matter of how you stick and attached to a great civilization more than its ethnic issue. Yeah. So proudly we say we are child of this nation. Yeah. And not only we can say this Assyrian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Aramaic, and we stop. Yeah. You know, the Oriental Christianity, it's part of our identity. Yeah. And we should focus on this also. Mm-hmm. Because after Christianity, our father and grandparents, let's say, they give too many let's say, nice things towards not only our nation, but whole nation, for humanity. Right. Imagine they developed Arabic language. Yeah. Imagine all these books were translated from the Syriac towards, from Greek to Syriac, then from Syriac to Arabic. Yeah. In the Islamic Caliphates.
And not only that, but that's actually the phenomenon you just mentioned is what brought Europe back out of the Dark Ages. Yeah. Because all the European knowledge, the Romans and the Greeks, whose philosophy was essentially erased and extinguished during the Middle Ages in Europe, was preserved in Mesopotamia. And it was through the school of Edessa, the school of Ninsibin, that it was brought back to Europe. So if not for that, it would have been extinct. Now, you mentioned a few really good things just a moment ago that really sync with what I have believed for a long time. I believe the Syriac people, of which I am certainly a part, has many roots: Assyrian, Babylonian, Aramaean, and so on. In my perspective, personally anyhow, the tree itself is Syriac with many roots. The reason I kind of always tend toward the word Syriac is because it's more universal, it's general and all-encompassing, right? Because whether your family speaks the Western dialect of Aramaic, like my family, we say Suroyo, Suryoyo. If you speak the Eastern dialect, Madanhaya, they say Suraya, Suryaya for the language. So that alone, for me, is an indication that could be the unifying factor, giving full credit to the various roots, right? The Assyrian roots, the Chaldean, Babylonian roots. Not only that, given our small numbers in the world today, we are not what we were, in terms of our population, what we were 100 years ago. I mean, not even a drop, and let alone 200 and 300 and 1,000 years ago. Given that reality, leveraging our numbers to the best of our ability in eradicating silly arguments is truly in our best interest. And as you said, we derived wonderful things from all of these identities and shared them with the world, right? The universal legacy of the Syriac, Assyrian Chaldean people is critical. When we meet on Capitol Hill from In Defense of Christians, the first thing we usually talk about when we meet members of Congress or staff is not the issue of the day. Of course, we talk about the issue of the day, legislation, but we always build it on a foundation of history. We explain to these members of Congress and staff that it was the Christians of the Middle East universally, right? The Eastern Christians, as you said, the Oriental Christians, who brought Christianity to the world. If Christianity in the Middle East disappears tomorrow, it wouldn't just be the Christians that are lost. It would be all of humanity, all of the Christian world that would lose, because even they derived a glimpse into the Christian philosophy, culture, worldview of 2,000 years ago through Christians like you. And that's incredibly important and something really that must be preserved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one thing I did want to ask you, when I look at your work and just the fact that there's, as I mentioned, the Directorate of Syriac Culture, that alone for me is a wonderful signal that the KRG is taking seriously Syriac Christians as well as the Christian faith as an integral and an indigenous part of Iraqi Kurdistan, Iraq in general and Iraqi Kurdistan. One thing that can't be ignored, and I really want to ask you this in full candor, is the mind of the Syriac people is shaped by many things. We have what's known as historical memory. A big part of our historical memory was constructed by Saipho, the genocide of Syriacs, Chaldeans, Assyrians, Armenians, Greeks in 1915 by the Ottoman Empire, the Turks. A big part of that, however, and this is historical fact, not necessarily conjecture, is that the Kurds played a big participatory role. If they weren't the engineers, that was the Ottomans for sure, they participated in the genocide. And this is something that has been passed down for generations through oral tradition, for better and for worse. Now, I don't say that to discredit at all the KRG, nor to condemn or implicate them in the Saipho by any stretch. The KRG is a new political entity, right? But I say this only to ask, how is it that you and your community is able to get over that psychological barrier that was created by this historical memory to move forward productively and constructively within the KRG?
Yeah. First of all, KRG is not only for Kurds. The majority is Kurds, but establishing KRG, it was established with all parties that they were opposition. One of the parties was Assyrian parties within this opposition. So we should take, in the history, there is many things bad and good happening. For the genocide, yeah, there was too many tribes, Kurdish tribes, they contributed in what happened in Saipho. Also, we can say there was families that they protect Armenian and Syriac people and Greek people, and they had good roles. This is not only we said, but even the authority in the Armenia, they have too many families, Kurdish families, and they recorded. They helped Armenian people and they helped Syriac people. So yeah, we should focus on those stories because in the history, Kurdish community, they didn't have authority. They didn't have power. There was no power. And there was nothing about identity as a Kurds. Maybe it was very new, let's say, idea. The idea of identity, it comes in the early 18th and etc. And at that period, what was very power and strong, it was the religion. We know those guys, they were from Muslim community, and all those mosque mullahs, let us say, or imams, they were campaigning and promoting to kill Christian community. So it comes from the background, which is a religious background. So we know this, and this was because there was no an entity or a, let's say, we call leadership in this community. Nowadays, Kurdish, after they thought that they should be liberated from the radical, let's say, thinking or ideas, nowadays they have parties, political parties, which is those parties, they are not radical or religious party. No, they are demanding for their rights as a nation. So it is a different story. So we cannot stick on something in the past, but we can benefit from the mistakes and wrong things happened in the past. That's why today I highlighted the issue reconciliation with each other. This is very important. And we between us, there was too many problems between this church and that church. And sometimes we kill each other, okay? But we cannot rely on these events to build a new generation. The new generation will not build in hate, will build it in accepting each other. So one of the roles that we are working on is how to introduce the Kurdish and Muslim community, and especially students from the schools, about the heritage, the rich heritage that we have. We are different. You can see the diversity. It gives power and strength to any entity and country and a nation. So from that we are taking, let me tell you something very important happened in the history. There is let's say, a hero towards Kurds. His name is Simko. So he killed Mashumun, his killer towards Assyrian. But he is a hero towards Kurds. There was another leader, Kurdish leader from Barzan. He didn't accept to receive him. Why? Because he killed Mashumun. So inside the Kurdish community, we have bad leaders, good leaders. So we should highlight the good leaders, and we should highlight the good things and go forward. And even, let me tell you, now we are in the Kurdistan region. Our community pushed, there was a street, its name is Simko Shikab in Erbil. So West community, the Christian community or the Syriac community, they demand to change the name of this street, and the authority accepted. So the acceptance of this means accepting the other as he is or as they are. Okay? So this is a good point, which is related to the KRG. And I'm not here to promote the KRG, but I'm here to say the facts. The facts we want to say is, in the KRG, there's good steps. So these good steps, we should encouraging the government, and we should be with the government. I'm inside the government. There is ministers in the government. We should push them with the international community, helping them to make more things good, accepting each other. So if we are not, let us say, conciliating the issue of the history, we cannot go forward. So nowadays, we should accept this is history. There is bad things happen towards us from the Kurds, from the others, and Kurds themselves, they should accept this issue. They participate in this, and there's Kurdish tribes also, they participate in Semel.
Yeah.
And Semel, not in the killing people, but they went to stole families after Bakr Sidqi and Iraqi army, they killed 5,000 people.
So just for the sake of our audience, you're talking about a very important point. In fact, something that IDC is working on, and that is the Semele massacre in 1933, conducted by the Kingdom of Iraq in the early days of Iraq. So you're referring to that period in history. Sorry.
Yeah, that period. So imagine, more than, according to us, there was between 3,000 to 4,000 people, or 5,000 we called. We don't have accurate numbers. So even the children, even the kids, even the women have been killed by Iraqi army. So this bad period, or the dark period towards our people, we know this, what happened, it's past. I cannot blame someone who is Arab now. All Arabs, they contribute in this. This is not good. We should focus that we have new generation. As I mentioned, we should not stick to have a speech against radical speech only. This is not a good solution. You know why? Because they will defend themselves if we have a speech against the radical. but we should build a new mentality. It's a new paradigm to build and educate new people, the new generation. We should grow them with accepting each other, with love. Let us spreading love, spreading not hateism. So in Kurdistan region now, we have good steps against the hateism speech between components, we called. As I mentioned, issue of the minority is not to say minority. We will not say minority, we will say components. Oh, you are indigenous people. We need our right. Yeah. You get the point? Yeah. And we need someone to hear us. We can say in the Kurdistan government, let's say regional government, there is someone to hear us. One of the things that we're proud in Kurdistan, that we have this institute, which we called General Directorate of the Syriac Culture and Arts. If you look at our calendar, you will see too many things. They are amazing and great. First of all, we should be active as community. Who's in charging this organization should be active and make the others to accept them. And you should be wisdom how to demand your, let's say, request. And also, we are doing good things. We should think it's a win-win situation. There's no meaning from now on for the, let's say, religious country or entity, nations, or ethnic country. Now a trend is diversity and accepting each other. So what we are pushing to have this area to be accepting each other more and more and more.
Absolutely agree. History should serve us as a lesson, not as a hurdle toward progress, is absolutely right. I totally agree with that point. I always like to close off with a positive note, and I would love to hear from you. What's next? What big plans do you have coming up for the Directorate of Syriac Cultural Heritage?
This year we have fully calendar. Last year we did many good things and many amazing things. And if you look at our activities, we are not working only for the Syriac community and culture only inside Kurdistan region. This is also additional thing towards KRG. But we are working for our people or Syriac people in Lebanon, in Syria, Qamishli, it's part of our activities. Yeah. We cannot do activity without Qamishli. Always the Qamishli group, they are with us in all our, let's say, activities. So
for the benefit of our viewers, I just want to point out, I always like to point out, Qamishli he's referring to is a heavily populated Syriac town in northeast Syria, not in Iraq, but as he's explaining, they are very much a part of his programming.
Yeah, they are part of our program from Syria, and also we have a small group because this is what remain in Tur Abdin. We have authors and some good people. They still are struggling and surviving there, like Malfono, Baktash, and also those are also part of our activities. So imagine we are gathering all those groups inside Kurdistan region, and it's part of our program. So this year we will focus to do, let us say, some very important forums and panels towards who we are, what we offered the Iraqi culture and what we offered the Middle East culture. So we will focus on this, and maybe we can do this year also again the Syriac Media Congress. In this Congress, we are gathering all our nation's media, if it is a Syrian name, if the name is Assyrian media, it's a Syriac media, or it's Chaldean media, we accept all. The act is more power than talk. Absolutely. Our act is to gathering people. So we will do this, and it's a good opportunity to invite you also as an activist, as a media person, so to be part of this. And we are proudly, last year there was too many delegation, they participate in this Congress. This year we will do it, let's say, bigger, and more organized, and it will open a discussion between all Syriac media, Syrian, Chaldean, not the matter. And we need each other. If I met you and you met me, we discussed, maybe you will not be aggressive towards me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is the aim of our.
It's easy to trash your work and discredit your work on the internet.
Yeah.
But when we meet together, and I'm not saying I do that, of course. But speaking of others, it's very easy to do that when we're not face to face. But when we're participating in the same discussion, same conference, same effort, then
Maybe
there's none of that.
Maybe there's a tiny things.
Right.
It's different between me and you.
Right.
But from your perspective, my perspective. And
The internet magnifies differences always.
Yeah.
It always does, and that's unfortunate. I want to thank you for all your work. What the work that you're doing as a viewer from afar is incredibly important, and from what I've seen thus far, incredibly effective. So thank you for joining me today. It was a pleasure to meet you. Tawdi Sagi, Basay Maraba.
Thanks. Tawdi Sagi. شكرا. I don't know. I think it's okay.
Thanks to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.